how have you been with everything that's been going on over there?
Actually, I've been doing okay, although I have to say that because we are lacking so many, veterinarians and workforce, it's been more challenging that way and exhausting, more clients, less help, longer hours, more stress. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And I have to admit that I did burn out a bit just a couple months ago and had to start dialing back and try to figure out a different way of supporting my animal friends and their people. Because, Einstein said that if you're trying to if you repeat things over and over again, expecting that you get a different outcome, that's the definition of stupidity or something like that. So I realized that if we want to make a change and if I want to help change things, I can't really change it from within the problem. I have to get outside the problem and fix it from there. So I'm working on an exciting project of creating a course for people that really is going to help them with step-by-step instructions of, how to get their animals back to health and also how to, not get them healthy sick in the first place, get them started out right. So I'm doing a lot of research right now on, what it is that people really need so that I can create a course that will really provide them with what they need. And then hopefully that will take off the load a little bit on veterinarians in general so that we can then care better for the patients that come and see us, because unfortunately, the quality of service tends to suffer a little bit when there's too much, because we all have our limits and our abilities that way. And so I'm excited about, doing that and hopefully also be able to serve people who don't have any holistic vets in their area that way, because I know that where you are, for example, there are no holistic vets. Right?
Yeah, it's
we're only very limited.
Yeah, it's still very challenging. Very
challenging. And it's it's that way everywhere and all over the world. And even if there are holistic vets around, a lot of them, they're not taking any new clients because they're overwhelmed with the demand and such. So I'm just hoping that with that course, I can help to give a little bit of relief to people, because, it's heartbreaking when you have an animal that has issues and you need some help and you can't get in anywhere. And it's also very heartbreaking on my end because, to see that, because, the basic needs of healthcare are not being met. And that just, that pretty much, that destroys me, that's happening, that animals are being turned away and that people who have so much love for their animals and care so much and want them to be really healthy and happy and would do anything can't get the support that they need. And that's just cruel. But it's just not right. So
I hear you. I think that sounds like a really good course, because to be honest, I've had so many quite a few friends of mine just in Singapore, when their dog is sick, and they're getting very frustrated with the current vet that they have, and it's like I try to share articles with them, or you could try and hop online with some holistic vets, but they're probably overseas, to try and talk to them. And sometimes I think for some of them, it's they're a bit unsure, maybe because they've never done it before, so they're kind of wary of spending money in addition to what they've been currently spending, to talk to someone that they don't know or never, they're not familiar with, so it's something that I think on my side as well, I've been trying to, give them a list of vets that I like. You're one of them, by the way.
Oh,
Basically, I tell them, if you look at my podcast and the people that I interview, they are the ones that I respect and trust. Especially the vets that I've interviewed. So I will tell them, like, there's the website. You could actually email them and ask them questions. But I think sometimes they feel very, very overwhelmed, and they're not sure, how it would work, even just to, and try and engage someone overseas to talk to. It's like they don't know what to expect. So I don't know. I might have to put a list of, like steps, or like break it down to explain to them what will happen and how it will work. Because they're like, oh, but they're over there, what can they do for me? I say, well, usually you could share your medical report in the first place, but again, I don't know, things in Singapore is a bit wonky at the moment. I have no idea what's allowed nowadays, to be honest, because a lot of the vet clinics here as well, they don't allow pet parents to go in, or even if it's just for a consult, it might be just one pet parent to go in. But like I had an emergency case, oh gosh, I can't remember, it's all blur now, maybe a month or so ago, where I had to bring a very sick cat to, I would say, a 24-hour vet clinic. It's not a hospital, it's close enough. And we could only do drop off. We couldn't go in, but the vet would talk to us on the phone. But it's a bit difficult, challenging times. I think challenging times.
Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult, and I did a Facebook Live not too long ago about that subject, which because it is challenging. It's challenging for everybody. It's challenging for the pet parents. It's challenging for the animals. It's challenging for the veterinary professionals. It's just there's nothing easy about it. But some of these people that you mentioned that may, have difficulties with connecting with someone overseas or another vet and don't know how that works. I mean, do they listen to your podcast?
I don't know, to be honest. These are the ones that I would say I know through, our rescue and adoption network, but usually I would just share them a lot of links that, that they can refer to. But it's whether or not, I don't know. Sometimes I think when they're just too overwhelmed, they can't think. They actually need some hand holding. And I think because they're so fearful, some of them, I do know, they have spent so much at the conventional vet that they're scared of doing anything different. Even just the diet change for some of them can be overwhelming. Even though I try to explain to them, like, oh, sometimes just changing the diet alone, you might see some improvement. But because they're so fearful, and they've been ingrained by the vet, like they have to follow and listen and feed the prescription diet or whatever. So they're very afraid that, they're going to rock the boat or something. But it's still, I think I call them the final wall of, slowly, chipping away when I try to share things with them. Yeah, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
No. Fear is a big deterrent to change. And such, because it can be very paralyzing, and when we're really afraid, the brain doesn't work quite at the level that it could, because we're more in a panic mode, and it turns some parts off. We all have that. I mean, I remember in school, we had a physiology exam. I completely tanked it because I could not remember a thing. My brain went to completely blank, and obviously I didn't have good marks on that. But I totally remember. It's like I was like a deer in a headlight. I just could not remember a single thing. If they had asked me what my name was, I probably would not even have remembered that. So I can, fear can be paralyzing, and does all sorts of physiological things to the body and the brain, obviously. But I mean, if you wanted to, I'd be more than happy to do a little thing of just explaining on how phone consults work, and for your people, if you want, or just kind of helping them with whatever you find is a challenge. Because I know we were going to talk about longevity, but I think the first step to longevity is even to be able to access the information.
Well, yeah, if you could do a little explanation, a step by step, like what to expect, and I could share that as both as a podcast as a video as well, because I'm learning how to do video now. It took a while.
Good.
but I'm slowly getting there, and I've been trying to fiddle with Instagram as well, because I am so terrible at all this. So
yeah, you and me.
Every time I think I'm sharing a story, I'm not, or I'm doing a live, I'm not, and I'm like, what did I press? I have no idea. And then my friend said, hey, congrats, you said something on the story. And I had no idea. I shared to a story, and I shared it to Facebook. I was like, I don't know what I did, but I pressed some buttons and I had no idea.
I guess we both belong into the over 14 category.
So I'm really one of those still trying to like figure things out, and I still press the wrong thing still, but I think if you could do a short like intro on what to expect with maybe a video consult kind of thing, I could share that as like one short like episodic clip for people, especially I think like people in this part of the world where they get very frustrated. Like I've had some people reach out to me from, say, Malaysia, which is just above Singapore, and one lady was telling me it takes her like 2 hours to drive to the nearest like hospital, and she's very frustrated because it's all very conventional, and every time she tells them that she's feeding raw, they give her this look, and they say like, you have to stop that, you're going to kill your animal kind of thing. I mean, so far I think the vet hasn't like stopped treating her and the cats yet, the animals that she has, but yeah, I think the conventional vets in this part of the world is still quite strong. We have a few holistic, I mean, like I know in Malaysia there is one holistic vet from what I understand, but even then, as far as I know, there's only one. Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's a matter of not having enough community too, because that can be very jarring. If you come across a professional who tells you one thing, that's completely different, or some of them will even tell you, well, you're killing your animal, with feeding raw. So that can be very difficult, and I think community is really important, and something that you're very good at building through all of your interviews and connecting people and sharing information and all that. So thanks for that. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to do a little intro. I mean, I can do it now if you want, and then you can just cut it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, do you have time? Do you? Yeah, I'm getting good at it. I'm getting good at it. Do you have time to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, the way it works for my practice, I mean, it's pretty simple process. People reach out, they send me an email, either, through my website. Some of them will reach out to me through Facebook. They will just send me a little message. And then what I do is I ask them for their email address so that I can send them some information. And the information email will contain a little video of how I work and why I do what I do, just so that we can be kind of on the same page as far as, you know, the intentions and the process of healing and restoring health. And then there's also a questionnaire that I attach so that people can give me some information on their animals so that I know a bit what's going on, what their concerns are, what has been done, you know, that sort of thing. And then I also have them email or ask their vets to send me medical records so that I know what's been done. Because, you know, oftentimes we kind of forget a little bit of, you know, what has happened. You know, oftentimes I say, oh yeah, back then 2 years ago, he had this and that. And they're like, oh, I totally forgot about that. So that helps me a lot too. So when I have all these 3 things together, once they watch the video and send me the questionnaire and the medical records, I prepare for the consultation so that I have a good, you know, idea of what's going on. And then we schedule a time to meet, and I usually do it by Zoom, but you know, there's also Skype. I can also do it on the phone. So there are different options to do that. And then I just chat with people as if they were in the room with me with the animal. And I listen to their concerns, and I help them come up with a bit of a plan of action. Because oftentimes people tend to be a bit lost as far as what the next steps are and what to look for. And I help them kind of narrow down what the underlying issue could be that is causing the problems. So that's a little bit how it works with the consultations. And then I do make some recommendations. Of course, I'm limited because I can't really see the animal, and you know, I don't have all the information that I would get if I see the animal, but I can certainly make a lot of recommendations as far as next steps, you know, what kinds of testing to do, for example, what to look for, you know, how to support them. Yeah, so that's a little bit how that works. And then usually I also send them a little follow-up email with a bit of a summary of what we talked about. And I can also direct them into different, you know, areas of things to read and explore and that sort of thing. So that's usually how it works with the consultations that I do. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not, you know, it's really not all that much different than scheduling an appointment in person.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Does that helpful?
Yes. I think just being able to share this little bit can help to start the conversation as well for people. Because sometimes they're shy and they don't know what to ask as well sometimes, or you know, how to go about it. So, you know, thank you for sharing your process so that at least I can share this with a lot of other people as well. That's very helpful. That's very helpful.
Yeah, and just the initial video that I send also gives them a bit of an idea of who I am, you know, so they already get a little familiar with me, and because it's also about building a little bit of trust. And yeah, because that creates some openness, and it also helps them to kind of figure out, well, what may be going on and what to focus on and questions to ask. And then I'm very good at asking questions too. So I'm like a dog with a bone. If I need more information, I go for it, and I don't let go until I hear what I want to hear. But obviously, with phone consults, there are definitely limitations, and you know, my number one priority is to keep the animals safe. So, you know, in the United States, you know, there's very few, if any, states where you're actually allowed to diagnose or prescribe anything, which I think, you know, sometimes it's a bit of, you know, difficult that we have that law, but on the other hand, it also keeps the animals safe because we can miss things, you know, if we don't see the animal because when we see them, we can put our hands on. I get a different feeling for them. So my priority is always to not miss things as well. Just turn it off completely. There we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
That's, I think, with COVID, I think it's really made a lot of people very hypersensitive to fear now. Like like they're worried about germs, they're worried about this, and then they hear the news that COVID can pass to the animals, or will my animal get COVID? Do I have to put the animal down if they have COVID? That kind of thing. I think for us, we try to allay their fears by saying, like, it's not that bad, but there'll always be a segment of society that's always I would say extremely on the extreme end of fear. Yeah.
I mean, this whole pandemic has certainly brought up everybody's stuff. Nobody has been spared from change. Basically, we've all had to change, and I think it's a really good thing. And what we're seeing is just what people have not been willing to face before that. The level of fear, and it's always been there. It's just been sitting under the surface, and now with the pandemic, it's just all kind of come out and erupted in a way. And so it's part of the purging of that, and growing and moving into something different, which we don't really know what that is yet, but there's just a huge potential for change. And it just kind of looks a little ugly right now, but something beautiful is really happening.
What
see that.
What sort of self-care have you been applying to yourself? Because it's not easy trying to treat patients with with COVID and everything. Have you done things a little bit differently to sort of take better care of yourself during this period?
Well, I have to admit that I tend to take really good care of myself in general, so I haven't really increased a whole lot. I'm definitely getting a little bit better at taking my vitamin D supplements, although in the summertime I tend to spend more time outside to get it that way, but I've been a little bit more stringent with that. And then I'm taking a bit more elderberry, and so definitely I've increased a little bit of my immune support in general, but other than that I haven't really changed a whole lot. And I did have an infection earlier this year, whatever that is. I mean, it showed as COVID positive. Whether that's really what it was or not, who knows. But in any case, I survived it just fine, thankfully. I know for other people it's been more difficult, and I certainly do not want to put down anybody's experience and fears or anything like that. But for me, because I've gone through it, and I've, it creates long-lasting immunity and such, I'm not really that worried. But, I always eat well, for the most part. I've made chocolate my food group. But that's not really new either. But I've just kind of kept up my care. I exercise every day, which I think is one of the most underappreciated things for animals as well. I eat well. I try to sleep enough. What else is there? I do some detox on a regular basis. I maintain hormonal balance as best I can. So that's kind of a little bit where I'm at, and I'm just trying not to buy into the fear so much, and stay more connected to who I am. I've been doing more meditating recently, just so that I can stay connected with my truth and not get so sucked in I don't usually watch the news very much, just a tiny bit, just so that I have some idea of what's going on. But for the most part, I'm not really sure.
Sounds exactly like me, because I officially like cut off news channels. I don't read the news. I don't, make an active seeking it out. It's only like my philosophy is, if it's bad enough, I'm going to hear it from my friends anyway.
Right, exactly. Usually it shows up somewhere. Somebody tells you about it. Yeah.
So, with COVID and everything, health and the immune system is so much more, I think, important now, even more so. If someone was going to talk about longevity for their pets at this point in time, what would you like to share or advise people on that?
Well, there are two approaches or two philosophies. One philosophy is we have pathogens that make us sick, we have to kill them. And then there's the other approach or philosophy that says, if we nurture the terrain and make sure that the terrain is healthy, then pathogens can't really do a whole lot, and we can just live with them in a community. So I tend to subscribe a little bit more to that one, of a community of supporting, the biome, of supporting the body, and making it as healthy as possible, so that then pathogens, who are present everywhere, really can't really affect the body so much. So that's a bit more of my approach to longevity. So I will work on diet, because if the diet is good, then we can build a good and healthy body, because it gets the building blocks that it needs. So, if we compare it to a house, if I have a house that I build out of cardboard, first time it rains, it just will kind of shrivel up into a puddle. Whereas if I have good building blocks for the house, I can really make a strong and sturdy house. So I'm doing that with diet for my animal patients, so that all the cells have all the nutrients that they need in order to function properly and do what they're supposed to do. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that I work with the GI tract, keeping that healthy, because the GI tract contains 70 to 80% of the immune system. So a strong immune system in the gut will already limit a lot of the diseases that are possible. And the GI tract contains so many microbes that are helping the body. The number of microbes in the body, in and around the body, really outnumber the number of cells by a factor of 10. And then on a genetic level, these microbes outnumber the cells by a factor of 150. Wow. So I always ask my clients, who's running the show here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the microbes. And so, what we see here is really just the suit that houses all the microbes. So we're just a heap of microbes dressed up in a suit. Mm-hmm. And I stole that from somebody, Raphael Kelman. I think he said that, but I really loved it. So for me, it's all about also nourishing and nurturing these microbes and nurturing a diversity, because here in the United States, at least, we have such a decrease in diversity of microbes because of all the toxic chemicals that are being made around. Roundup that contains the glyphosate. Glyphosate is an antibiotic, so it kills a lot of microbes. And we have all kinds of other herbicides and pesticides that kill things. We have a lot of toxic, heavy metals. And then we also have the whole issue with electromagnetic radiation that is polluting the world, because they have done studies around cell towers, and they can find that there are less microbes around these cell towers. So, there's a lot of killing going on of microbes, a lot of destruction of microbes, a lot of decrease in diversity, and that will then affect overall health in general. And I think that's also why we see such a decline in health, continuously. I mean, even in the last 2 years, I've seen an incredible increase in disease and diseases that are much more difficult to turn around. For example, allergies. I used to have pretty good success with allergies, but these days it's just gotten so much more difficult to turn these animals around and give them relief, just because we're so bombarded by everything and by things that are not natural and that are not supportive of the terrain, of the base. Anyway, so the GI tract is very important that way, because anytime there's an imbalance in the GI tract with the microbes, for one, they're not making all the nutrients that we need, because they make a lot of neurotransmitters, they make vitamins, they help digest the food, they help to train the immune system to function properly and not over or underreact. They do so many different things. They help the brain function better. And so if we have an imbalance there, that causes, disruption within the body, but it also causes a lot of inflammation in the GI tract and leaky gut as a result. So with leaky gut, we have the cells that just aren't connecting properly. So there are like little holes between the cells where things can go in that are not properly digested, and that triggers the immune system. And because these particles go into the blood and the blood floats all around the entire body, there's, cleanup needed all around the body. And anytime there's some cleanup needed, the immune system comes running and says, alert, alert, I gotta clean it out. And the immune system, the way it cleans out things is by creating inflammation and inflammatory chemicals that then help the cleanup. But if this continuously happens, this continues trying to clean up, that actually then eventually destroys the body. So the chronic inflammation that happens from gut issues and from this chronic inflammation in the gut creates destruction of the body and such. Because if we hit ourselves somewhere, if like I hit my arm somewhere, I want inflammation there to heal, but once it's healed, the inflammation needs to go, because the inflammation is a cleanup, and we don't want to have constant cleanup happening. So it's the chronicity that's a big issue. Gut health is one of the crucial aspects of the body's health. So if the gut isn't working properly, nothing else will work. And the saying "no guts, no glory" is very it's the truth. So those are just three of the pillars, and then also hormones and mobility overall, nervous system, and fitness and exercise are some of those. But I guess the most important part with longevity is that we have a bit of a system, and we address all the parts kind of simultaneously. I mean, I will still start with doing the change of diet first, and then doing GI health, and then doing some detox. So there's a little bit of a plan that you have to have, but you have to address all aspects of it, because otherwise it doesn't work. What I see oftentimes is people just change the diet. So if a dog is sensitive to chicken, for example, they just change the diet, but they never actually fix the gut. And then the dog just becomes, sensitive to something else. So it doesn't really, it's not long lasting, basically. It's just, you put a Band-Aid on it and that's it. So it's important to really address, all these different parts to work. Again, if we were to look at a house, if I only build one wall, but leave all the other ones out, I don't really have a house. Right? Yeah. So we have to have all the walls, we have to have the roof, we have to have all aspects of the body. We have to take that into consideration, including mental, emotional, spiritual health, all of these aspects.
Yeah, I think for like some pet owners that I've met, when they talk to me like, my animal is allergic to chicken, and I say, okay, so what are you feeding right now? And they'll tell me it's a prescription diet,
Mm.
and the vet said it's, and I'm like, well, I'll sort of say like, it might not be the chicken that your dog is allergic to. It could be actually something else that's in the food that is triggering it. So I always try to tell them like, you might want to try and consider cleaning up the diet a bit, yeah, because a lot of times they tell me like, oh, my animal is allergic to chicken, they can't eat this, and they'll tell me like they're on prescription diet, the vet said so. The vet said so. So I'm like, okay, a bit hard to prove that one, but and the current thing that you're doing right now. But
yeah. Well, I mean, you have to sort of educate people and just ask very simple questions. Would you eat that? If you read the label, would you eat that? Right?
True.
Or would you live on Cheerios or whatever cereal on the same kind, same flavor your entire life?
Yeah.
Like, no, I mean, it makes no sense. And that's where, the veterinary community in the conventional aspect of it anyways, are kind of not well trained when it comes to diet. And as some other vets have mentioned already, we're the only profession that recommends feeding the same thing over and over again, and the highly processed food. I mean, in the human world, nobody tells you to eat Cheerios in your entire life. I mean, right. If a doctor were to say that, you'd just say, oh, you just, goodbye, see you later. I don't think you know what you're talking about. We talk about fresh food for humans all the time, and eating healthy, eating vegetables, eating fruits, eating clean food. Well, the same applies for our animals because their physiology is not that much different,
Yeah. You mentioned, diet being one, but there's always the environment and the toxins, how would you normally like ask your clients like what to look out for, when it's got to do with cleaning up the environment? I mean, how would you?
Well, I mean, there are challenges obviously with cleaning up the environment, because there are certain things that we can control and then certain things we can't control. So if your neighbor is spraying things, it's hard to control that. Or, if the government is doing whatever they're doing. But there are a lot of things that we can control. We can control what we put into the animal's body, making sure that it's the least toxic possible. Obviously, it's impossible in this day and age to avoid all toxins because it's just in the environment and in the food chain. But there are certainly ways that we can improve that. So, for example, most kibble, most dry food is high in glyphosate just because of how the ingredients are harvested. Whereas if you're feeding a raw, unprocessed diet, it's very unlikely, or there's much less glyphosate, in that diet. So the animals will get less of that. And so, through diet, you can make a big difference that way. Water is important too, to make sure it's filtered, because most water is contaminated these days, because the cleanup of the water when it's being recycled in these plants, they don't take out everything, and they're also not testing for everything. So they don't check for all the different contaminants that could potentially be in there, because that could be the Prozac that, somebody is taking, the hormones that somebody's taking, the blood pressure medication that gets, excreted through, bodily matter. So all of that ends up in the water as well. And then, when it rains, I mean, the water that comes through rain, at least in the US, a lot of that also has glyphosate in it. So there are a lot of chemicals in the water that we need to filter out. So having a good filtration system is good. Reverse osmosis, for example, takes out most of it. And there are a lot of units that also remineralize the water, because reverse osmosis basically takes it all out. So it depends a little bit on your area. Here in the United States, we can plug it into the environmental working group. They have a link somewhere on their page where you can put in your zip code, and then it will show what kinds of chemicals are in the water, and then also what kind of filter to use to take those out.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite incredible, you know, the database that they have for that. So water is certainly important, and that goes for city water or, you know, community water, and also for well water, because well water can also be contaminated depending on what, you know, gets into the water table. So, you know, food, water, and then whatever chemicals you use in and around the house to clean. My approach is always to go with something natural that is biodegradable. And if something has chemical names on it that I don't know what they are, I don't even buy it. I'm sure I could look it up to see if it's safe or not. But generally, if I don't know what it is, I just stay away from it.
So
You know,
I have a question because bleach is something that most families are used to, you know, like, is there a cleaner way of the alternative to bleach, or no? Or, you know, how would you use bleach if you had no choice?
Well, I mean, if you have to use bleach, then make sure that you have a lot of airflow going on, because all that, you know, smell from the bleach is not exactly healthy. But I use essential oils if I feel like I need to disinfect things a bit. You can also use a bit white wine vinegar or white vinegar. You know, lemon juice is very also kills things. So, you know, there definitely are alternatives. And I guess for me, the difference is too, I don't really necessarily feel the need to kill everything. You know, I'm not, to me, sterility is not a goal, and it's not something I would like to achieve, because it's not really that helpful.
Because it's not natural, right? It's not natural.
No, because we need diversity. So for me, I prefer to create the diversity in my microbes so that they can then do their thing. So I kind of like to delegate, if you will.
So because I do a lot of rescue work, so every once in a while we might get cases of, like, say for dogs, parvo or cats, you know, parvo distemper or pen luke, you know, and I know most rescuers would take out the bleach or throw away, you know, like discard, like they will just hack out the furniture and just throw everything out. Is there a more natural way of, say, dealing with something like parvo, for instance? What do you think? What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you have a parvo outbreak, obviously you have to do something about that, because, you know, otherwise you're spreading it around, and that can be very difficult. Okay. So it really depends on the situation, for sure. But how do I deal with it? With my puppies, for example, I work really hard at creating a very healthy gut, so they get an appropriate diet. I usually put them on fecal capsules, which is basically an oral fecal transplant, which helps to increase the diversity of microbes in their gut. Because I don't, you know, oftentimes we don't know where, you know, what mom's microbiome looked like, because that's how the puppies get the microbiome. So I help them with that, you know, help to replenish it. So I just start them out with that. I will give them some parvonosode, which is a homeopathic remedy that basically tells the body to be a bit on the lookout for it and to kind of be prepared. And then, I mean, it's not like a vaccine, but, you know, it still can give the body a little bit of information to kind of recognize it a little bit faster, and then, you know, have the immune system kick in a bit more. I also put them on colostrum, which has a lot of immune function, which can also support the GI tract. I put them on some enzymes so that they can actually digest their food. Oops, sorry. Are you still there?
Yep.
Oh, I don't know what happened here. Something just showed up in my field and you disappeared. Sorry. Anyways, so yeah, colostrum and then the digestive enzymes, because especially puppies when they're young, the way they get food presented to them is in a pre-digested form, because mom goes out and hunts and she, swallows the food. It gets mixed with the stomach acid and other digestive juices, and then she regurgitates. So it's already sort of pre-digested. So I'm trying to mimic that with adding some proteolytic enzymes, like pancreas. I mean, you could just buy pancreas somewhere and just, grind it into the food, and other types of enzymes. So I will do that. What else? I like to also add a bit of extra vitamin C to their diet, especially when they're exposed to other dogs. So I tend to also have people increase the defenses, before or after they've been exposed to other animals, or after they've been to the vet or some other place, because veterinary offices, pet stores, dog parks, etc., are kind of the places where they definitely get the most exposure. So I make sure that, they kind of amp up the immune support in those times a little bit as well, because it's important to socialize them, so we certainly have to do that. But yeah, those are some of the things that I do just to support the GI tract, because that's where most of the immune system is, and that's where they're more susceptible when they're little.
So, you were talking about the no-sode. So it's kind of, it's not a vaccination kind of thing, but it, it's to build up their immune system. So like with most people who are used to conventional vets, they are told that they have to vaccinate all the time, like every year, would you, do you have a protocol that you do in your practice, that you sort of advise people like how to approach them to vaccinate or not, especially now with COVID, because everyone's obsessed with vaccination now, humans especially, how, if a pet parent was to say to you, like, Dr. Odette, like, I was told I need to vaccinate my dog every year, especially my puppies, they get so many shots. Is that okay?
Well, it depends. So the way I approach vaccines is I inform people. I give them all the information, and then I have them decide. So I actually give them the information. Like, for example, here in the United States, very often breeders will already have given a distemper and parvo vaccine to a dog at 6 weeks. At 6 weeks, that vaccine is going to do nothing, pretty much, because the immune system of the animal cannot respond to that yet, because it's just not mature enough. And at that time, they also have relatively high levels of maternal antibodies to these two diseases that were, given to the puppy through the, colostrum, the first milk. So all I'm doing with a vaccine is I'm basically using up that maternal antibody, because, you give the vaccine, then the maternal antibodies are going to respond to that. So in the sense, you're kind of weakening the immune system of a puppy if you do that. So I give them the information, based on science and what we've seen and what we've, examined and researched. And then I let them decide what they want to do. And I have all sorts of different people. Some people are very I have to admit that a lot of people who come to me, they're not very pro-vaccine. But I have some that feel safer with having a little bit of vaccines on board, and others feel safer not having them on board. So in the end, I think the important thing is that people are educated and they know what they're dealing with, what the pros and cons are of both, because not vaccinating has you know, pros and cons, and vaccinating has pros and cons as well. So in the end, people have to kind of determine on which risk are they more willing or more able to live with and sleep at night than the other. And that looks very different for different people. But yeah, most people who come to me, they're usually, they're more worried about vaccines than not vaccinating. But again, I just leave them a choice. I give them the information so that they can make the choice. But, you know, once they've had puppy vaccines, you know, for distemper and parvo, they're usually good for life. They're usually immune for life. So I recommend doing titer testing at least once. And then if they have a good response, you know, if they mounted a good response to the initial vaccines, then usually they're good for life. So I don't even recheck, and I don't revaccinate, because once they've had a response to a vaccine, or if it's more natural immunity just by having been exposed to it over time, if they have some antibodies that show up, that means they have memory cells. And these memory cells, they can, on a dime, they can just switch on and make more antibodies when needed. So with the puppy vaccines, because distemper and parvo vaccines are pretty potent vaccines, in that regard, they create good immunity. They don't usually need it again. Other vaccines, such as Bordetella, Lepto, Lyme disease, Lyme vaccine, those types of vaccines, they don't really mount a very good immune response, just because they're a different kind of vaccine. So I don't usually recommend them, because the diseases themselves can be treated. Lepto, if it's caught early enough, they can recover easily, so they're not deadly vaccines. So I definitely stay away from those that would, you know, cause more deadly diseases. And then rabies is a different subject, just because, you know, it's required by law. So, you know, we have that aspect that comes in as well. In the United States, not all states, but in many states, we are allowed to write medical exemptions for animals that are sick. So I do a lot of that, because a lot of the animals I see are really not healthy enough to receive another vaccine.
So how would you support an animal, like you said, those who come to you usually not very enthusiastic about, you know, over vaccination, for instance, but say because by law, like you said, rabies has to be done. Is there a way to help the animal you know, deal with that extra vaccine chemicals in the body? You know, how would you help support the animal to get over that hump?
I usually start them on some high dose vitamin C ahead of time. I use a liposomal form, which is much more easily absorbed, and you need less of it. So I start them on that for about a week before. And then I also, depending on the age, I also put them on a little bit of a detox protocol during that time, which I would always also start about a week before. And then I continue both the detox and the vitamin C afterwards as well. And I will also send them home with a little bit of a homeopathic remedy. For rabies, I use lysine or lysinium. And that's a homeopathic remedy that's actually made from rabies, from the disease itself. So it's a no-sode. And then for some of the other vaccines, I will use Thuya. But I'm not a homeopath, so you may have talked to some homeopaths about that, because there are other homeopathic remedies that can be used. And generally, in homeopathy, we prefer to use a remedy that really fits the symptom picture if symptoms show up. So that's just on a side note, but I still will use a little bit of homeopathic remedies. And then I also do a little treatment that helps them just tolerate the vaccine a little bit better. And it's based on an allergy therapy that is manual, where I stimulate the nerves that come out of the spine on both sides of the spine, between the thoracic and lumbar vertebrae. So I massage those points that will then help to stimulate the immune system and the nervous system to then not overreact to the vaccine. And then I just cross my fingers and hope for the best. And I always have people write down, keep a diary just to make sure. I also tell them what the potential symptoms could be. Like for rabies vaccine, most of the symptoms will be more of a behavioral nature, because rabies, the disease itself, tends to affect behavior the most. Rabid animals, they go a little crazy, they become aggressive, they just don't behave normally. So with our animals, those are the signs that I will also have people watch for. I've had some dogs that started barking at cars more afterwards, and those are small little things, but anything that's abnormal, I have them write it down. Dogs can also become hypersexual, where they start humping everything. They may start eating inanimate objects. They can become aggressive. They can become fearful. So I definitely recommend that they keep them away from kids for a few days, just until they see how an animal has responded, just to make sure nothing happens, because unfortunately there are some rare cases where the animals just completely lose their minds after a rabies vaccine. Unfortunately, I've had one of those that started attacking his owners and had to be euthanized because it just became too dangerous and torture for everybody. So just paying good attention afterwards, and not just for 2 days, because vaccine reactions can occur later, so oftentimes I will see animals come in for, they started having allergies, and, I look at their history, and, 1 to 3 months before that, they just had like a slew of vaccines. And I'm like, yeah, well, their immune system just got hijacked.
Yeah, in Singapore, well, we're kind of blessed in the sense that we don't have rabies in Singapore, so we don't have to vaccinate our dogs for rabies. The only thing I would say is, pre-COVID, people used to travel and relocate because of work or whatever. So that's when actually the animals leaving the country, they will have to take a rabies shot certification. Somehow it's like the international thing if you go into another country. So it's like, for those pet parents have no choice, because they have to comply with that. So sometimes they're like, how can we support our animals, our dogs or cats who have the rabies shot prior to flying off? So these are things that they will consider. You were talking about detox. Now fasting is like one of the, well, I won't say it's new, but a buzzword nowadays. Intermittent fasting, for both humans and animals. I have some pet parents who are very shocked when I say like, oh, my dog eats 1 meal a day. And I'll tell them like, and every few weeks or so I will actually faster, for just 24 hours kind of thing, and they're horrified, because they're like, my dog needs to eat, and or they'll panic and they'll tell me like, my dog doesn't want to have breakfast. I'm like, well, well, I don't eat breakfast either, but it's too early for me. How would you explain this to new pet parents who are not used to the concept of number one, a buffet service 24/7, for instance, or feeding 3-4 meals a day, some with some dogs, like they think that they have to eat like humans, so they have breakfast, lunch, second lunch, or tea time and dinner and supper. How would you explain that to them?
Well, I always refer back to nature, because our physiology, human and animal, has really not changed that much. Even though people will say, oh no, we've been feeding kibble for 100 years now, or however many years it is, and therefore the body has adjusted to it. Well, that's not the case. So the physiology still works best with, when we follow the rhythms that nature kind of made us for, basically. And so for dogs and cats, they have their rhythms. So they sleep, they, get hungry, they go chase something, they find something or not, and then they eat that, or if they don't find anything, they don't eat, and then they go sleep it off. And then when they're hungry again, they start all over again. So I think, mimicking nature is the best way to keep a body healthy. So if we feed them what they eat in nature, it will keep them healthier. And if we feed it in the rhythm that they would eat it in nature, it also keeps them healthier. Because a dog's and a cat's physiology is not made to be snacking constantly. I mean, cats will eat a little bit more frequently than dogs in nature because they have to find more mice. So there's probably a little bit more frequent meals. But generally, they also get a break where they can digest things. And then they, the body, can do its thing, and then they go back out. But if we constantly add more, it really disturbs the whole process. And certainly there are dogs, that need to eat a little bit more frequently just because they have issues and such. But, if we were trying to mimic it for like for a healthier dog, that would certainly be a good way to look. Because, for example, with dogs and cats, they only make stomach acid when there's food coming. Whereas, for example, a horse makes stomach acid 24/7. And horses eat 24/7. So their physiology is made to eat 24/7. If they don't, they get stomach ulcers. So we have to look at the physiology of the body and how things are working and how they would do it in nature. And if we can mimic that, that's really the best way to do it. And dogs and cats, they have a little bit of a bigger stomach compared to the rest of the GI tract. So they fill it up. So if we, and then the digestion is happening, and then it moves through the small intestine and out the other end. But if we continuously put more food into an already likely relatively full stomach that is in the process of moving things along, it kind of delays that, because you're putting undigested food into something that's already being digested and is supposed to keep moving. So it really kind of disturbs the whole digestive process by continuously snacking. So they're definitely not made to snack constantly. And again, there are exceptions, obviously, to every rule, but generally in nature, that's not how they do it.
So now that we're going through, the digestion and all that, let's talk about poop, because I love this subject. I like talking about poop. So what goes in must come out. How would you describe a good poop?
A good poop doesn't smell much. It's firm. It's small. It breaks apart and disappears easily when it rains. Yeah.
And
that's how I would describe it.
I've had some pet parents who tell me, like, my dog's poop, the color is different. Sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's like yellow, sometimes it's a darker shade of chocolate, and they'll say, like, why is that?
Well, I mean, it always depends on what they're eating, So for example, if they eat some beets, or greens, it will change the color of the food. Some of it is also, from the bile that goes in it. Yeah, color usually, unless it's blood, I don't really care too much about the color. Okay. Because, for example, if they have a little bit more bone parts in the diet, then their poop will be a little bit more yellow and whitish, and powdery. So Yeah, I don't really focus too much about on the color.
So would you say it's more important on the smell and the firmness?
Yeah, firmness, smell, and size as well. If they make a humongous poop, then that's an issue as well, because that means that they're not really digesting things well enough, or they're not really they're getting a lot of things in their food that they shouldn't really be eating, that are basically just fillers that they can't digest.
Okay.
So,
well,
you know, a good food should be processed maximally, and very little should come out.
Well, Dr. Odette, I just want to thank you today for spending the time. And even though we've had, this time zone kind of thing going on in the internet world, it's so confusing. I just want to thank you for actually, making the time for me, and going through very quickly on the, the different aspects of longevity for an animal, from head to toe, coming all the way out to poop in the end, for our animals to look out for. Yeah,
you had to bring it there.
I love a good ending, I like a good poop. I like a good poop. That's just me, So I just want to thank you for your time, and I hope that we can, do this more often again, because I actually have, more questions for you actually. But it's getting a bit late on my end and your end as well, so I just want to thank you for all that you do for the animals.
Well, right back at you. And it's always such a pleasure talking to you, because you always ask really good questions. You're a very interesting person, and I love that. And, just on that note, I listened to your interview with Chelsea Kent the other day, and I listened to it twice because there was so much good information in it. I'm like scribbling away, like, oh yeah, I need to know that. And I didn't even know that. So it's like, you just make it really interesting, and you ask good questions and important questions, and you have such a beautiful heart and so much to give, and such passion. And so it just means so much that you're out there and doing your thing. And, thank you.
Thank you.
In any way I can support you, I'm always, happy to do so.
Well, today's podcast was, like I said, it was like I wasn't even sure whether it was going to come on or not because of the time zone shift. But I'm just really grateful that, you could make the time. And again, I'm actually very touched that you actually listened to my podcast, and twice with Chelsea Kent, because that's the first time I've heard anyone say that to me, because I'm terrible at social media. So I never do a follow-up. That's just me, because I just interview and then I just put it out there, and it means a lot coming from you as well, because it's people like you that inspire me to want to talk and reach out to people like you more.
Yeah. Well, I just know that with you, the interviews are going to be good, and I wish I had more time, because I would listen to all of them.
Oh,
but unfortunately, I run out of time a little bit. But I listened to the one with Karen Becker as well, and it was exceptional as well.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. That's really kind.
Yeah, your interviews are really good, and definitely people need to listen to them.
Well, well, I still think I'm a newbie, but I do try my best. Like I said, I actually have more questions for you, so I hope we can follow up again, so I can ask you more things, because it's some things that you said today that make me think a little bit more. And I think that's for another episode, probably when we have more time to deep dive. But whatever you shared today, I want to thank you, because I think this kind of information is useful for especially very new, pet parents out there who are not, I would call them pet parents 2.0, or they're not really familiar with the holistic side of things yet. and they're just so used to the conventional medicine approach. So whatever you shared today, though, probably with the listeners who are used to listening to my stuff, they're probably saying, oh my God, this might be like really basic stuff, but actually this is what I'm doing, especially today with you, is really for the new young pet parents who haven't crossed over to the dark side or the woo-woo side, as I call it, and
light side.
Yeah, really, and I just feel very blessed because I think you're an awesome vet. And, if I can support you and share what you know with other people, that helps so much. So I really want to thank you for your time and patience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And, it's about picking people up where they are, and there are a lot of new people kind of, getting more into the natural holistic field, and they deserve a good, they deserve the help, and they need the help. So I'm more than happy to provide that, of course, anytime.
Okay.
We can make it as basic as needed.
Okay, I'll catch up with you again because I know we gotta sign off soon. So we'll do a follow-up. My cat is actually calling me now. I think I'm supposed to feed her.
Oh, okay then. You better listen.
Yeah, my boss is calling me. Yeah, my boss is calling me. So anyway, you take care. It was wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, you too. And thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, as I said.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Okay, bye.